Hello and welcome. I'm Sima Katauka and you're watching the World Report on NewsX World. Let's take a look at the top headlines of this hour. President Donald Trump has said that he expects to meet Venezuelan opposition leader Maria Corina Machado. Meanwhile, interim leader Delcy Rodriguez has rejected Trump's claim of U.S. control, insisting Venezuela remains sovereign. U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance has urged Europe to take Donald Trump seriously on Greenland after Washington floated buying the Danish territory and did not rule out military action to secure it. Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed welcomed Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi in Addis Ababa for the first stop of the diplomats' New Year trip to Africa. The two leaders pledged deeper cooperation on issues including trade, infrastructure, energy, and transportation. Egypt and the European Union said they are working to implement the second phase of the US-brokered Gaza ceasefire between Hamas and Israel. Speaking in Cairo, according to joint press remarks, Egyptian Foreign Minister Badr Abdelati and EU Foreign Policy Chief Kaja Kallas said the body must begin work without delay. According to Syrian state media, Syrian President Ahmad al-Shara held a phone call with French President Emmanuel Macron to discuss bilateral cooperation and latest developments in Syria and the region, while Syria thanked France for supporting Syria's stability and humanitarian recovery. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan and Syrian President Ahmad al-Shara held a phone call to discuss latest developments in Syria and efforts to strengthen regional stability. Al-Shara stressed the need to extend state sovereignty across all Syria, while Erdogan reaffirmed Turkey's support through joint coordination against shared threats. Jordan's King Abdullah, European Council President Antonio Costa, and European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen concluded the first EU-Jordan summit in Amman, reaffirming a strategic and comprehensive partnership. According to a joint statement, the leaders pledged deepened cooperation and strongly backed a two-state solution for Palestine. NASA Administrator Jared Isaacman says NASA astronauts aboard the International Space Station will return to Earth earlier than planned, following a medical issue involving one crew member. Now for this hour, we start with U.S. and Venezuela. U.S. President Donald Trump has said that he expects to meet with Venezuelan opposition leader Maria Corina Machado, the Nobel Peace Prize winner who was in hiding during a deposed President Nicolas Maduro's rule. Meanwhile, Venezuela's interim president Delcy Rodriguez insists that her country is not subjugated, despite U.S. President Donald Trump's claim to be in charge thereafter removing her predecessor, Nicolas Maduro. She also emphasized that Venezuela remains autonomous and independent despite the military operation, and there was no passivity during the attacks. Rodriguez has made the remarks during a ceremony for the 100 Venezuelans that her government says were killed during the U.S. assault. Let's listen into what the interim president of Venezuela has shared.
Y cobardes, les estamos legando la historia de un país que no se rinde, de un país que no se subordina. No estamos subordinados, ni estamos sometidos. Tenemos dignidad histórica y tenemos compromiso y lealtad con el presidente Nicolás Maduro, que ha sido secuestrado. Tenemos lealtad con la primera combatienta, diputada Cilia Flores, y hemos comprometido no descansar hasta verlos en libertad, de vuelta a su casa y de vuelta.
Now for this discussion, we welcome Mr. Matthew Vadam. He's an American journalist, joins us live from Washington, D.C. Thank you very much, Mr. Vadam, for joining us once again. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Thank you. Now, looking at this, can you tell us how does U.S., in particular the U.S. administration and President Trump feels about, Maria Corina Machado and also Rodriguez?
Well, obviously, President Trump would prefer to have Machado in power, but there was an intelligence report that concluded, U.S. intelligence, concluded that she didn't have enough support in the country, particularly the support of the armed forces in Venezuela, and that she wouldn't be able to control it. She would not be able to successfully run a government. And so that is why President Trump temporarily allowed Rodriguez to become the acting president of Venezuela. But there's no indication that that interim status is going to continue for very long. There are discussions right now about whether Venezuela should hold fresh elections. In fact, Machado herself, I believe, is on record in the last couple of days saying she thinks Venezuela should have fresh elections because the ones last year were tainted and Maduro cheated and rigged the elections that allowed him to, continue on as president. So I think that President Trump has warm feelings towards Machado, but he doesn't think his feeling is he doesn't want to hand over the country to her and for it to degenerate into chaos and for them to be like, for example, a military coup that would overthrow her. So that is his concern for stability. And I'm not saying I agree with his concerns. I'm just telling you that's what the Trump administration's position appears to be on this matter.
Thank you for sharing that. And what do you think Trump's administration would do to increase, the popularity of Machado in South America or in Venezuela now?
I'm not sure what he can do to increase her popularity. She's pretty popular, I think, among voters, but she doesn't have the support. She doesn't have institutional support. She doesn't apparently have support within the current government among, top bureaucrats and members of the military. And I think they have to be won over or they need to be replaced. See, the problem is President Trump didn't decapitate the government as a lot of us thought he was in the process of doing. He merely instigated a coup, in effect, and spirited Maduro out of the country to face drug and narco trafficking charges in the United States. He did not eliminate the communist, socialist-inspired government there, and that's a problem. And now that the most urgent matter, getting rid of deposing Maduro, has been taken care of, now Trump has to figure out how he moves on to the next step and tries to give Venezuela some democratic stability. And I'm not sure if he has answers for that yet. Remember, the invasion was, less than a week ago. The invasion that extracted Maduro. They haven't kept troops in the country. They've surrounded the country by sea with a vast American armada. So I don't know if it's fully been thought out, and if the government has plans, I don't think that they have released all of those plans. They're not, public record, and for good reason, for matters of national security. They can't tell their would-be enemies every step that they're going to take. So, I think a lot of work has to be done to stabilize Venezuela, and there are talks ongoing with Machado to figure out how to do that.
Thank you for laying it out all that for us, Mr. Vadam. Please stay with us as we come back to you. Now, we stay in the U.S. White House Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt has said that the U.S. law enforcement officers face organized attack. This comes as on January 7th, a U.S. immigration agent fatally shot a 37-year-old mother of 3 in Minneapolis. State and federal officials offered starkly different accounts of the shooting, in which an unidentified immigration and customs enforcement agent shot U.S. citizens Renee Nicole Good in a residential neighborhood. Let's in fact listen into what Karoline Leavitt has said about the incident.
The deadly incident that took place in Minnesota yesterday occurred as a result of a larger, sinister, left-wing movement that has spread across our country, where our brave men and women of federal law enforcement are under organized attack.
Now for this discussion, we welcome back Mr. Matthew Vadum. He's an American journalist, joins us live from Washington, D.C. Thank you very much, Mr. Vadum, for staying with us. Now, you know, we are hearing a lot of different reports and different interpretation of this particular incident that has occurred. What more can you tell us about this incident from U.S.?
There was an incident in Minneapolis, Minnesota, where a woman, a radical activist, was monitoring the activities of ICE, the Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency, in a neighborhood in Minneapolis. And at one point, this has been shown on all sorts of videos shot from different angles. At one point, she's approached by ICE agents, and she won't get out of the car. She's asked to get out of her car, and instead she starts revving the engine. The wheels of the front of her SUV start spinning on the ice on the road in Minneapolis, and then there is an ICE agent in front of the vehicle, and it's not always obvious. It's not entirely obvious from the videos, but if you watch them a few times, the agent appears to be positioned in front of the SUV, and it looks like she's turning the wheel to leave after being ordered out of the car. So she's disobeying an order from a police officer, a law enforcement official, and then as she's turning the wheel, the vehicle is moving towards the ICE agent. And so it appears that the ICE agent then thought that his life was in danger, and he fired several shots, at least 2 shots, through the windshield and struck her, and she died. There are some people saying that this is an act of murder and that ICE is, an evil organization, and that the agent needs to be brought to justice. But in cases like this, when whether it's obvious or whether it's a borderline case, the police officer tends to be given the benefit of the doubt, and you can see in the videos that have been shown that the vehicle is moving towards him. And I would think that when all is said and done, the courts will, if this ever makes it to court, the courts will find that the agent was right to fear for his life and to take action. Now, maybe he could have jumped out of the way, but when you only have a fraction of a second to react to a potentially life-threatening situation, some people will go on instinct. They will do the best that they can. So, I can understand why people are upset with this, but it looks to me that, like the immigration enforcement official acted reasonably. But I understand why people are upset. A mother has died. She put herself, she died by misadventure. She is the author of her own misfortune. She put herself into a dangerous situation, and she reacted badly. She could have just stopped the vehicle. She could have, cooperated with the law enforcement officers. In the United States, when a police officer asks you to get out of there are a lot of things you can say no to a cop for. You can refuse, sometimes to do a field sobriety test if you're being accused of drinking and driving. You can refuse to give your name in certain situations. You can refuse to give evidence against yourself or to discuss certain things. You don't have to talk to the police. But when the police ordered you out of your vehicle, there's just about no lawful excuse that you can offer for not getting out of the vehicle. So she should have stopped the vehicle. She should have gotten out. She didn't. She tried to drive away. It looks from the video like she was trying to hit the police officer, and in fact she did at least bump him, though it's not quite clear if it was, caused him any injury. Yes. But she did bump him with her vehicle, and she's in the wrong, and now she's dead. And it's a tragic thing, but that's that appears to be what happened.
Yes. Thank you for sharing that.
Okay.
All. Thank you very much, Mr. Vadum.
All right.
Protesters demonstrating against the killing of a woman by an immigration officer in the U.S. Midwestern city of Minneapolis clash with law enforcement agents as anger mounts over the shooting. Profanities and a tear gas-like chemical irritant filled the air as protesters and immigration agents scuffled and shoved each other in Minneapolis. Protesters have gathered before dawn outside the Bishop Henry Whipple Federal Building, home to one of Minnesota's main immigration courts. Now for this discussion, we welcome back Mr. Vadam. Thank you, Mr. Vadam, for staying with us. Now, is this protest still going on, and do you know how many people were in this protest?
I don't know how many people were involved, but I know that there are protests there and in other American cities against ICE, and it didn't just start with this unfortunate incident in Minneapolis where the mother was killed. So yeah, I don't know the extent of it, but I know that that there are some people who are concerned that ICE is too powerful and they don't like ICE going in and arresting people, and they're not happy about that. Other people are simply political radicals, and they want to use this as an opportunity to turn people against law and order, to turn people against the system and against the Trump administration. And they view it as a political opportunity. So, you have a mixture of both kinds of people involved in protesting ICE at this time. A lot of these people are very violent, as we've seen in Portland, Oregon, and in Chicago, Illinois, and in Los Angeles.
Thank you, Mr.
Where they've been particularly active in using physical force against ICE operations.
With that, I would like to thank Mr. Matthew Vadam for joining us today and sharing that insight throughout our news. Thank you very much. Now we stay in U.S. U.S. President Donald Trump has signaled a major escalation in the fight against drug cartels. Trump has said that land strikes against cartels are coming soon. He said the move would follow recent U.S. maritime attacks in the Eastern Pacific Ocean and the Caribbean Sea. Trump did not share operational details or timelines. In an interview, he claimed drug cartels are effectively running Mexico. Trump has said the United States is now prepared to expand its actions beyond the seas and onto the land. Now for this discussion, we welcome Mr. Adrian Calamel. He's a terrorism scholar, joins us live from New York. Thank you very much, Mr. Calamel, for joining us once again. Good to see you. Now looking at
Great
this,
to see you, Suma.
Thank you.
Sorry.
No, thank you very much. Now looking at this, how would, designating a drug cartel as targets for U.S. land strikes alter the typical or conceptual boundary between criminal organizations and terrorist groups? And now what risk of escalation will this hold if, Trump goes ahead with land strikes?
Yeah, a great question, Asuma, and that's a difficult, this is a really weird place to be in right now when we're talking about this. As Matthew was saying before when he was talking about Venezuela, is that the institutions around Maduro are still there, so the military, but he's got multiple layers of institutions. Some are in those narco terrorist groups. They are economic producers, and they're also muscle or thugs for Maduro. You also have to remember that the relationship between Hezbollah and the Venezuelan cartels is extremely tight. So if we start hitting, and maybe this is the goal, if we start hitting cartels that are operating, let's say, not inside cities, but start using airstrikes to take out cartels that are operating in rather rural areas. If we start hitting those, are we going to start hitting Hezbollah members and other individuals as well? Not that Trump would have a problem with this. And also, is this an attempt to kind of shed one of those security blankets around those institutions that protected Maduro. It's interesting where this is going with the talks about mainland strikes. You know, I hope there is a real plan here at this point. You know, I was feeling pretty confident when I was talking to you yesterday, Asuma, and this evening when I hear about land strikes hitting cartels, I start to get a little bit nervous. I will say this, it's a lot, you know, when he came into office and he specifically mentioned the Mexican cartels, that becomes a lot more dangerous for the United States because that's right on our border. And the Mexican cartel probably could overpower the Mexican armies if they bandied together, if you look at the cartel. So it's a bit of an apples to oranges comparison there. But it still gives me cause for concern. Is this going to turn into what we would call mission creep, where we really don't have a plan, but we're just kind of creeping along and getting more and more and more involved than we should be, than we need to be?
Do you think that, you know, American people will kind of maybe demonstrate against this? How is the reaction like in U.S.?
Yeah, well, the reaction in the United States, I think it's ultimately gonna be split, and I think, well, you will have I would say almost every single Democrat except for maybe John Fetterman come out against this. If we're just talking about politicians, if you talk about Republicans, the individuals that are isolationists that think that a Gulf or an ocean protects us, they're against this. They put their hat on the America first, but they don't understand that, you know, as I mentioned, I think it was last night, that Venezuela did represent a clear and present danger to American safety. So I think it's going to be split kind of down the middle, but as we've seen with any type of conflict, the longer it goes on, the quicker you lose public opinion.
Right, that's true. Thank you for highlighting that. And lastly, Mr. Calmel, how could this framing cartels as entities running a state affect international norms on sovereignty and also the future use of counterterrorism justifications?
Yeah, another great question, Asuma. And this is the one where I look at kind of the duplicity of our foreign policy, and I'll highlight the Taliban in Afghanistan, who were sending billions of dollars to help prop up that country because they're unable to manage it and govern it, and then they siphon off the money, and they're narco terrorists if you look at them, and groups such as Al-Qaeda and those groups make money in the heroin trade. Well, it's no different here in Venezuela, except for we've decided, you know, it's in our hemisphere. Afghanistan, that was a 20-year war. We want to put that in the rearview mirror, pretend it didn't exist, or try and forget about the best we possibly can, and kind of move on to this and saying, you know, this is our hemisphere, this is what we need to focus on. In reality, I think we should be, you know, I think our approach with Afghanistan should have been much different. I don't think, you know, but that's a discussion for a different day.
Yeah, indeed. But thank you very much, Mr. Calmel, once again for joining us and sharing that insight with us on News 6 World. Now we move on to Colombia. Colombia's most wanted rebel commander has issued a fresh call to arms following the United States seizure of Venezuela's now deposed leader, Nicolas Maduro. In a video sent to media, FARC dissident leader Ivan Mordisco summoned guerrilla commanders from Colombia and across the region, calling the United States a common enemy and urging an urgent summit of insurgent groups. The message came as Colombia and the United States signaled closer cooperation against armed groups operating along the Venezuela border. President Gustavo Petro and U.S. President Donald Trump have agreed to take a joint action against cocaine smuggling guerrillas, particularly the ELN, Colombia's last major rebel force. Colombia has accused the ELN of attacks and kidnappings of Colombian soldiers, saying fighters retreat to rare bases inside of Venezuela. Now we move on to our next news. NASA has said that it will return a 4-person crew aboard the International Space Station, cutting short their mission a month early because of a serious medical condition affecting one of the astronauts. NASA on January 7th afternoon called off a planned spacewalk with 2 U.S. astronauts that had been scheduled for Thursday over what it described as a medical concern, with an astronaut later saying in a statement that it was considering ending the astronauts' rotation mission early. The agency did not disclose the name of the crew member or the medical condition, citing health privacy, but said the person is in a somewhat stable condition. Let's listen into what the NASA administration, Jared Isaacman, has shared.
For over 60 years, NASA has set the standard for safety and security in crewed space flight. In these endeavors, including the 25 years of continuous human presence on board the International Space Station, the health and the well-being of our astronauts is always and will be our highest priority. Yesterday, January 7th, a single crew member on board the station experienced a medical situation and is now stable. After discussions with Chief Health and Medical Officer Dr. J.D. Polk and leadership across the agency, I've come to the decision that it's in the best interest of our astronauts to return Crew 11 ahead of their planned departure. Within the coming days, the Dragon Endeavour spacecraft will depart the International Space Station with Commander Zena Cardman, pilot Mike Fink, Kimya Yui from JAXA, and Oleg Platonov of Roscosmos, and safely return them to Earth. We expect to provide a further update within the next 48 hours as to the anticipated undock and re-entry.
That's all we have time for. Keep watching News X World for more news updates from around the world.